Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Happy Friday to you and your family. Taking a little look here at Terra Classic. And of course, as you can see by the title, the end is nigh. And what I mean by that is simply put, we are right at this key level support and it's, well, actually we're kind of past the key level support and we're kind of in this little overtime situation where the price action could very well drop a lot lower, okay? Because again, we got to recognize not a lot of volume below this level and that gap will inevitably get filled and there's a great chance we could see further downside. We'll look at a lot more here, of course, and see why and if that's still the case, but we are in this not so good situation right now and just kind of being real with you. All right, so if you're new to the channel though, keep this in mind. I'm not a financial advisor. I love teaching people to trade. I love helping people become better traders. I've had a lot of graduates at my trading university graduate here recently, and I tell you what, it's a fantastic experience to be able to see people actually making a living off of this. So if you want that for yourself, check it out. CryptoCash.tech is a site. Link in the description below. I have a university. I have a community as well where we all learn and grow together. And last but not least, I send out signals for every single trade that I take. And we took a nice long position yesterday, took some decent profits, and kind of just waiting to see what happens with Bitcoin here today, waiting for that confirmation to take our next trade. That being said, last thing I want to note is just quickly here with BitGet, I highly recommend you use their exchange. They have a fantastic exchange service, mainly because the United States, we actually have this option where you can use leverage trading without a VPN or KYC. All right, it's pretty uncommon, but it's really awesome to be able to have that option. That's the main reason why I partnered with them for my US members. In addition, they also allow for you to have a pretty significant transfer bonus. I was able to maximize that benefit myself. You basically just transfer funds over and effectively trade with the exchange to be able to get that benefit. So check that out, of course, all in the description below and the comment section. So here's the thing with Terra Classic. What I was mentioning earlier, as far as the end being close, it's two things here. In other words, the end could be close in the sense that it could keep going. Obviously, we could see a bounce here too. Now, the likelihood of a bounce, I think, is less likely than the price action going lower, but we'll look at that and find out why. Okay. Now, another thing to recognize, is Bitcoin is essentially following Terra Classic, or actually the inverse. Terra Classic is starting to align itself with Bitcoin, so when Bitcoin has a bad day, Terra Classic now has a bad day too. And you got to recognize traditional markets gapped down by 1.5% today, and that's a pretty big deal in the regular markets, and that effectively allowed for the price action to decrease. So if we see here, 1.5% for NASDAQ and S&P. You see this, 4 red days here, 4 red days here. There's no surprise, it's correlating itself, okay? So try not to be naive and thinking this is going to the moon tomorrow. Perhaps inevitably it might have a lunar launch. But for now, it's realistic to say that it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, and try not to let these other fools tell you otherwise. And the reason I say that is just because, again, the fundamentals can only get you so far. They allow for pumps and dumps to happen. But when it's the day-to-day stuff outside of those unrealistic situations, the technical analysis is where this comes into play, all right? And again, this has been giving us bearish signs for some time, and we'll go ahead and walk through that. So first of all, we lost 50 on the RSI, or at least we're tentatively below that. I would say we have effectively lost it because the likelihood of a closure back up above 28,000 today, I think it's pretty unlikely. But that basically just reiterates the fact that we are now bearish on Terra Classic. Again, mostly just based on the last 14 days of trading, okay? As you can see, the last 14 days of trading have not been fantastic. So we lost that support. Okay, so under 50 on RSI, not great. We can also see this oscillator starting to gain momentum again. Okay, and you could almost say the same thing happened previously when the price action came up, started to look like it was wanting to come down, and it sure as heck went into overtime. Coins like this have a tendency of doing that. So I wouldn't put it past it here with the low amount of volume support that we have in the range of 16,000 to 24,000. There's a lot of uncharted territory right here. In other words, it took 2 days to blast through that area, and it could very well take weeks for us to accumulate more volume at that area to essentially build a lower price point at that volume. Okay, so again, volume speaks very loud, for lack of better terms. Not trying to, no pun intended. It literally does. It tells you a lot, and you got to listen sometimes, right? So in that sense, I'd highly recommend always kind of looking at volume and seeing what's going on. We can also see too that volume itself, in the general sense of things, is picked up the last couple of days. Now, the thing that's interesting here so far, at least with the last 8 hours, is we have a pretty significant candlestick here, and then of course the most recent one right now. So in other words, with this amount of volume followed by the previous, This tells us a lot that with this gravestone candle, there's a likelihood of the price action coming down further, because in this 4-hour period, the price came up and right back down to where it started. Now, granted, that candlestick hasn't closed yet, and the smaller the time frame the candlestick, the less reliable the patterns can be, but in general, that is not great for the price to be accumulating right there, because once more, even though it could be a potential double bottom, you could argue, it could also be gearing itself up for a significant loss. Okay. Again, retail investors are using this coin to make tons of money, right? People like you and I are basically investing in this coin for long-term gain in some cases, right? Some are shorting, some are longing, of course, don't get me wrong. But for the most part, a lot of folks are just adding to their position and trying to make it in the long run, okay? Well, whales don't give a crap about that, and they've taken control of this coin. So you got to recognize that it's no longer this, this sunshine and rainbows. Okay, we're in this doom and gloom situation right now, and it's kind of dire straits. We're very, very close to the edge, right? We're basically looking off the side of a cliff, and somebody is behind us pushing, right? It's just, I don't know. I have terrible analogies, but I hope you get the point. All right, anyways. We're bouncing off 30 on the RSI. This is potentially a saving grace, or at least we're close to 30 on the RSI. You can see we had the same thing happen before, and it kind of recovered. But again, this isn't a reason to take a trade, but it is helpful to note that we're mostly overexhausted to the downside, and the likelihood of it recovering would be higher. What I mean by that is just you take a look here, TD sequential. We can see we're hitting an 8, likely to hit a 9 here shortly. And of course, once that 9 closes, the price action could go sideways and up from here. Okay, because again, you do see here when Terra Classic hits 9s, it does have a tendency of turning around. Okay, look, here's a 9 here, turned around. There's a 9 here, turned around. Right, so it's not a guarantee, but it's a likelihood. Okay, with us being at an 8, hypothetically, the price should increase from here. But again, traditional markets continue to go red, we might experience a lower price point for Terra Classic. So this is one of those situations where we're at a likely bottom, but I don't want to give you any false certainty that you should take a long position right now, because we still don't have confirmation. MACD is diverging ever so strong, and essentially not really looking all that good. I know it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, but just like to kind of reiterate that, because I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that say we're all good and it's going to recover, but it hasn't yet. And until it does, we got to remain cautiously optimistic and make sure that you are not naive in the sense that, hey, this is just going to bounce and you're going to buy the dip and it's going to be all right. That doesn't work. That's not what good traders do. All right, so last thing to note here is, of course, let's actually look at TD sequential on the hourly, see if we have any exhaustion as well. So we got to a 7 potential reset here. Could even come down to a 9 if the price keeps going lower. So generally speaking, we are almost to the end here. So good news is we're at an 8 on TD sequential on the 4-hour, and we're at a 7 on the 1-hour. So hypothetically, we're hitting this, the next 4-hour time frame should experience either a bottoming out, which is where we should experience the price action going sideways from here, or a potential bounce. That's what should happen. Okay. Again, no guarantees on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a slight recovery. The key takeaway here, though, is that we got a resistance at 28,000. If the price does come back up, don't be surprised if it comes and gets rejected off 28 and continues lower. It's a very common characteristic when you're establishing lower highs consistently. Okay. So again, just some things to kind of think about. Last thing as well is the Ichimoku cloud. This tells us you should and likely could continue to keep your short position open. It would probably be ill-advised to take a short position as well. I know that sounds crazy. Like, well, if I don't take a long, why can't I take a short? Well, there's a thing called confirmation and patience. You got to wait for it, and you got to make sure that you have those things for you. Everything as we've seen here so far is mostly bearish. This is also bearish in the sense that the lagging span is free and clear of the price action, conversion lines below the baseline, and so is the price below this area here. So if the price were to come over here essentially and then get rejected, that would be a case in point where you'd have more confirmation. But again, generally speaking, for lack of better terms, this indicator is telling us that a short position would be much more viable than a long, right? So if we kind of add everything together, there's like an 80% probability the price action will either continue to decrease, or it'll bounce temporarily up to 28,000 and reject. Those are two strong likelihoods in my opinion, and I think for the price to again recover, like some other folks are saying, I think it's not good advice. It's not sound advice. It's naivety, and unfortunately, it's very common characteristic in trading. So, anyways, I've been trading for 17 years, and I can assure you that these kind of patterns have a tendency of continuing until they don't. And we're in a situation right now, making lower lows, lower highs, consistently coming down. I would not be surprised if we lose the support at 24,000, especially if Bitcoin has another bad day. So be sure to watch my other Bitcoin videos too, so you get an idea of kind of what's going on there, because Bitcoin is the biggest dog in the industry, right? Obviously, Bitcoin has a bad day, the entire market has a bad day. So if you can become a Bitcoin professional, you can navigate seas like this a lot easier because you understand the correlation and how they work together and how they separate. Like XRP, for example, that one's going crazy in a good way, and it's moving contrary to Bitcoin. So it doesn't care what Bitcoin does for the most part. And in that regard, it continues to do very well, right? Terra Classic had its time, and unfortunately, it hit its peak, and it's coming back down. This is very standard, very normal. You look at pretty much any other cryptocurrency in the industry, and you'll see a very similar behavior. It typically always comes down to 0.618 or 0.382, and it's essentially one of those things where it continues to fulfill its own prophecy, right? So again, I know I'm rambling here, but generally speaking, be cautious and careful, and try not to just be smart, I guess you could say. And smart, I think smart trading is being a patient trader personally. So I think we got to wait for confirmation here. There's a great chance we'll see a bounce, but if we can't break a buck above or close above on the daily at 28,000 or higher, there's really not a lot of leg to stand on, if you will. All right. So I hope that made sense and how I clarified things today. And I hope that you learned something, of course. You want to become a better trader? Again, 10 My Crypto Cash Trading University. That is a link in the description below for my website, cryptocash.tech. And obviously, partner with BitQuit. They're a fantastic exchange, excellent leverage, and the application is super easy to use. Awesome on the phone. All right, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you all in the next one. Take care.